Okay, here we go, campers. We're ready for chapter 14. It's called, if you remember, The Way Out. So this is going to be an exciting chapter. A lot happens in this chapter. We're going to learn a lot of things. This is a really kind of a pivotal chapter. So this would be kind of like when we're doing our story maps. This is kind of like at the very top of the story arc. Okay, it's like right up at the top. So if you remember, previously on, if you remember in chapter 13, Deciphering the Message, they really got pretty far deciphering the first part of the message. And Dune remembered in the middle of the night something about that part marked with an E, and he was remembering about those stones that had the E carved into it that he thought was maybe from some water going over it, but really it seemed like it was carved in there now that he's remembering. So that's where we left off. So he woke up in the middle of the night and remembered that. So we're going to start off with the very next day is when this chapter starts. It's the next day after Dune had that kind of epiphany in the middle of the night. So here we go. Chapter 14, The Way Out. The next day was the song rehearsal day. Everyone was off from work at 12 o'clock to practice for the singing. It was a slow morning for messages. Lena had a lot of time to sit at her station in Garn Square and think. She put her elbows on her knees and rested her chin in her hands and stared down at the pavement in front of the bench, which was worn smooth by the many feet that had passed there. She thought about the mayor down in his room full of plunder, gorging on peaches and asparagus, and wrapping his huge body in elegant new clothes. She thought of his great stack of light bulbs and shook her head in bewilderment. What was he thinking? If he still had light bulbs when everyone else in Ember ran out, would he enjoy sitting in his lit room while the rest of the city drowned in darkness? And what, when the power finally ran out for good, would all of his light bulbs? They would just be useless. Possessions couldn't save him. How could he have forgotten that? He must be thinking the same way as Looper. Everything was hopeless anyway, so he'd live it up while he could. She leaned back against the bench, stretching her legs out, and took a long breath. Very soon the guards would storm into the secret room and seize the mayor as he sat stuffing himself on stolen goodies. Maybe they already had. Maybe today the stunning news would come. Mayor arrested, stealing from citizens. Maybe they'd announce it at the singing so everyone could hear it. No one came with any messages to be delivered, so after a while, Lena left her station and found a step to sit on in the alley off Caluce Street. She pulled back her hair and braided it to keep it away from sliding around. Then she took from her pocket a copy of the instructions she'd made just after she sent her note to the mayor. She unfolded it and began to study it. This is what she was doing when a little before 12 o'clock she looked up to see Dune running towards her. He must have come straight from the pipeworks. He had a big damp patch of water on one pant leg. He spoke in an excited rush. "I've been looking all over for you," he said. "I found it." "Found what?" "The E. At least it looks like an E. It must be an E, though you wouldn't know it if you weren't looking for it." "You mean the rock marked with an E in the pipeworks?" Yes, I found it." He stood breathing hard, his eyes blazing. "I'd seen it before, but I didn't think of it as an E then, just a squiggle that looked like writing. There are all these rocks that look like they're covered with writing." "Which rocks? Where is it?" Lena was on her feet now, bouncing with excitement. "Down at the west end of the river, near where it goes into that great hole in the pipeworks wall." He paused, trying to catch his breath. "And listen," he said, "we could go there right now." "Right now?" "Yes, because of rehearsals. Everyone's going home, so the pipeworks will be closed and empty." "But if it's closed now, how will we get in?" Grinning, Dune produced a large key from his pocket. "I ducked into the office on my way out and borrowed a spare key," he said. Lister, he's the pipeworks director, was in the bathroom practicing his singing. He won't miss the key today, and tomorrow everyone will be off work. He did an impatient shuffle. "Come on," he said. The town clock struck the first of its 12 noontime booms. Lena stuffed her copy of the instructions back in her pocket. "Let's go." The pipeworks was empty and silent. Lena and Dune went up the hallway, past the rows of boots and the slickers hanging on their hooks. They didn't take any of these for themselves. This was not a pipeworks tunnel they were about to enter. They were sure it wouldn't be dripping with water or lined with spurting pipes. They went down the long stairway and out into the main tunnel where the river thundered alongside the path, its dark surface strewn with flecks of light. Dune led the way along the river's edge. As they neared the west end, Lena saw the rocky outcroppings Dune had described to her. They were strange, bulging shapes, creased with lines, like the faces of the very old. Not far beyond, Lena could see the places where the river disappeared into a great hole in the pipeworks wall. Dune knelt down beside a clump of stones. He ran a finger over their convoluted surface. "Look here," he said. Lena stooped down and peered at the deeply carved lines. It was hard to see the E at first because it was surrounded by such a tangle of other lines, and because she was expecting it to be an E drawn with straight strokes. But once she saw it, an E drawn with curving lines, a cursive E, she was sure it had been carved on purpose. It was centered on its stone, and its lines were deep and even. So from here we should look down the river," said Dune. "That's what the instructions said. Down riverbank to ledge." He lay on his stomach next to the rock and inched forward until his head hung out over the edge of the path. Lena watched him anxiously. His elbows stuck up on either side of him, and his head, bent down, was nearly invisible. He stayed that way for long seconds. Then he shouted, "Yes, I see something," and scrambled to his feet again. "You do it," he said. "Look at the riverbank right below us." So the edge goes down, like straight down like a wall. And so Dune is scooching. He's laying on his belly and he's scooching right to the edge, and he's leaning his head over so that he's looking down, like right over this drop down is what he's doing. And his elbows are kind of sticking up, and he's like looking right straight down, like down a straight wall. And now he's telling Lena to do the same thing. Lena did as he had. She lay down and pulled herself forward until her head was over the edge. 8 feet or so below her, she saw the black water churning by. She tucked her chin in and looked at the riverbank. It was a sheer rock wall, straight up and down and slick with spray. At first, that was all she saw, but she kept looking, and before long she could make out short iron bars bolted into the bank, one below the next, almost directly below her. They were like the rungs of a ladder. They were a ladder, she realized. The bars provided a way to climb down the riverbank. Not a very appealing way. The bars looked slippery, and the water below was terribly fast. And because of the dimness and the flying spray, she couldn't actually see if there was a ledge at the bottom or not. But the E was clearly an E, and the bars were clearly a ladder. This must be the right place. So think about that. There's a straight wall going down, so a straight wall, and on the edge of it, there's these bars that are going down. So they'd have to go over the edge and climb down this ladder on the edge. And then the river is down here, and they're hoping that down at the bottom, there's some kind of a ledge for them to stand on, is what they're hoping. "Okay, who'll go first?" said Dune. "You can," said Lena, getting to her feet and stepping away. "All right." Dune turned so that his back was to the river, and he eased himself carefully over the rocks, feeling for the first rung with his foot. Lena watched as he sank out of sight little by little. After a few moments, his voice called up from below, "I'm down, you come." Lena inched backwards just as Dune had, letting one foot dangle over the edge, lower and lower until it touched the first rung of the ladder. She shifted her weight to the other foot, clinging with cold fingers to the ridge in the rock, and lowered herself slowly until she was standing on the rung with both feet. Her heart was beating so hard she was afraid it would shake her fingers loose from their grip. Now she had to move downward. She felt for the next rung with her foot, found it, and let herself down. It would have been easy if it hadn't been for the river waiting below to swallow her up. "You're almost here," cried Dune. His voice came from right below her. "There's a ledge, one more rung, and you'll feel it." She did feel it, solid beneath her foot. For a second she stood there, still clutching the ladder. The surging water was only inches below her now. "Don't think about it," she told herself. She moved sideways 2 steps to stand next to Dune, and there in front of them was a rectangular space carved out of the river wall, rather like an entry hall of a building. It was perhaps 8 feet wide and 8 feet high, and would have been invisible from anywhere else in the pipeworks. You had to have climbed down the riverbank to see it. Now, this is kind of hard to imagine, but if you think about it, you think about that river wall, so you think about it's a straight down, so they just climbed down this straight down this ladder, and then the hole goes right into that river wall. It goes right into that straight down sheer rock wall that they just went down. So if you were standing up here, and this is where the people were walking back and forth down the path, they were walking here, they would never see this hole that they had to come down and go into. It's kind of hard to picture, but you have to really think about what that would look like. She moved, she moved sideways 2 steps to stand next to Dune, and there in front of them was the rectangular space. Oh, I already read that part. They stepped into the entry hall and walked a few steps, though the light to see them came from the tunnel behind them. Lena stopped. "There's the door," she said. "What?" said Dune. The water roared so loudly that they had to shout to be heard. "The door!" Lena yelled happily. "Yes," said Dune, "I see it." At the end of the passage was a wide, solid-looking door. It was dull gray, molted with greenish and brownish blotches that looked like mildew. Lena put her palms against it, and it was metal, and it felt cold. The door had a metal handle, and just below the handle was a keyhole. Lena reached into the pocket of her pants for her copy of the instructions. Boy, it's a good thing she made that extra copy, or she wouldn't know what to do. She wouldn't have that with her, because the original one is in her bedroom back at Mrs. Murdo's. So it's a good thing she was smart enough to make that extra copy. She unfolded it, and Dune looked over her shoulder. Together they squinted at the paper in the dim light from the main tunnel. This is the part right here," she said, pointing. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera around again like I did for the last chapter, and I'm going to show you what this looks like, because there's a lot of missing pieces here. So let me see if I can get the camera turned around for you. Hold on. All right, this is what it looks like. There we go. So part 3, big space, addle down iver ank. There's 2 edge, APR, space, 8 low. And then number 4, there's that big space, ACKS to the WATR, comma, big space, fine door of BO, space, KER, key, big space, hind, there's that small steel pan, and there's the right, and a big space, period, REM, space, EY, open DO. There's a lot missing there. All right, you keep looking at that. Are you figuring anything out? All right, I'm going to keep it on there so you can look at it while I read. Lena ran her finger along line 3. Let me make it flatter. This must say something down riverbank to ledge approximately 8 feet below. That's what we've just done. Then 4 is something about backs to the water, find door something. And then key hind. That must be key behind. And then there's the small steel pan. Do you see a small steel pan? Dune was still studying the paper. It says right. We should look to the right of the door. And quite easily they found it. It wasn't a pan at all, but a small square of steel embedded into the wall. A steel panel. said Lena. She ran her fingers across it and felt a dent at one side. When she pressed there, the panel sprang open easily and silently, as if it were glad to have been finally found. Inside, a small key was hanging on a hook. Oh my goodness, a key. All right, I'm going to put you back up here. Hold on. Around again. Back up on my handy-dandy holder. There I am. Okay, back to the book. Lena reached for it and drew her hand back. "Shall I do it?" she said, "or shall you?" "You do it," said Dune. So she took the key from its hook and put it in the keyhole. She turned the key from it. Turned it and felt a click. She grasped the door handle and pushed, but nothing happened. She pushed harder. "It won't budge," she said. "Maybe it opens outward," said Dune. Have you ever done that? Gone to a door and you pushed it and pushed it and pushed it and it didn't work, and then you tried to pull it instead because you were going the wrong way? "Maybe it opens outward," said Dune. Lena pulled. The door still didn't move. "It has to open," she said. "We unlocked it." She pulled and pushed and hauled on the handle, and the door moved, not inward and not outward, but sideways. "Oh, this is how it goes," cried Lena. She pulled the handle to the left, and with a deep, rasping sound, the door slid sideways into a slot into the wall. Behind it was a space of utter darkness. Just darkness. That's it. They stared. Lena had expected to see something when the door opened. She had thought there would be light behind it, or a path, or a road. Remember, she's looking for that road that leads to the other city, and all there is? Darkness. Oh my gosh. If you were in the room right now, I would tell you to turn and talk to somebody. Just darkness. That's it. A big nothing. "Shall we go in?" said Lena. Dune nodded. Lena stepped across the threshold. The air had a dark, stuffy smell. She turned to the right and put her hand against the wall. It was smooth and flat. The floor too, was smooth. "There might be a light switch," she said. She patted the wall just inside the door, from the floor to as high as she could reach, but she found nothing. Dune turned left and felt the other side with the same result. "Nothing," he said. Very slowly, keeping a hand to the wall and tapping the floor cautiously with their feet before every step, Dune and Lena made their way in opposite directions. Each of them soon came to a corner and turned again. Now they were going deep into the dark. Boy, this is a theme for this book. It's darkness all the time. They both had the same thought. Is this the way out of Ember? A long, dark tunnel? Must we go mile after mile in darkness? But suddenly Lena gave a yelp of surprise. "Something's here on the floor," she said. Her foot had banged against a hard object. She knelt down and touched it cautiously with her hands. I wonder what it is. It was a metal cube, about a foot square. "It's a box, I think. Two boxes," she added as she explored farther. Dune took a step forward in the darkness, and his knees banged into a hard edge. "There's something else in here, too," he said. "Not a box." He ran his hands along it. "It's big and has a curved edge." "The boxes are small enough to lift," said Lena. "Let's take them out where there's light and see what they are. Come and help me." Dune had made his way to Lena and picked up one of the boxes. They walked back through the dark and set the boxes down a few feet from the river's edge. They were made of dark green metal and had gray metal handles on top and a kind of latch on one side. The latches opened easily. Lena and Dune raised the hinged lids and looked inside. What they saw puzzled and disappointed them. So they're puzzled, so they don't know what it is, but they're also disappointed. It means that they're not real happy with it. Lena's box was full of smooth white rods, each of them about 10 inches long. So think about a ruler. That's 12 inches long, so it's a little bit shorter than a ruler. At the end of each one, a little bit of string poked out. In Dune's box were dozens of small packets wrapped in a slippery material. He opened one and found a lot of short wooden sticks, each with a blue blob at the end. Are you figuring out what these things are yet? It's something you know, but something they don't know, something they've never seen before, but something you're very well aware of. Both boxes had a label on the inside of the lid. Are you going to find out? Ready? If you haven't guessed it already, here it is. The label on Lena's box, this is the one with the smooth white rods, says CANDLES. Candles. And the label on Dune's said, have you guessed it? MATCHES. Matches.
Hello, honey.
And under it was a white, inch-wide strip of some kind of rough, pebbly material. What does candles mean? Lena said, puzzled. She took out one of the white rods and it felt slick and almost greasy. And what does matches mean? Said Dune. Matches what? He took one of the small sticks from the packet. So they don't understand. They don't know what candles are or what matches are. Because remember, they don't have movable light. They don't have anything in Ember that can be used as light that's movable, right? So now here the builders, right, have left them candles and matches. But did you hear what Dune said? He said matches. Matches what? Like goes along with what? He doesn't understand what that word means, matches. Could it be something to write with, like a pencil? Maybe it writes blue. But what's the point of a whole box of tiny pencils? Said Lena. I don't understand. Dune frowned at the little white blue-tipped sticks. I don't see what else it could be, he said finally. I'll try writing something with it. Now think about what happens when you have a little match and that little part at the end that you strike on something. You know what that does, right? It starts a fire. So he's going to try to write with it. So think about what would happen. I'm going to try to write something with it. On what? Dune looked around. The floor was too damp from the spray of the river to write on. I could try it on the instructions. Good idea? Lena handed them to him. Carefully, he rubbed the blue end of the stick along the edge of the paper. It didn't leave a mark. He rubbed it along his arm. No mark there either. Try this white stuff, Lena said, pointing to the white strip inside the lid of the box. Remember that white strip that was kind of pebbly, it said, so it's kind of rough? He scraped the blue tip across the rough surface. This is my favorite part. Instantly, the end of the stick burst into flame. Dune cried out and flung the stick away. It landed on the floor a few feet off, where it burned brightly for a moment and then sputtered out. Can you imagine his surprise? Remember, he was researching fire and he couldn't find anything out about it. Now all of a sudden, he takes what he thinks is a pencil and he scratches it and it lights into fire. Can you imagine how surprised he was? I can't even imagine what he was thinking. They stared at each other with their mouths open in astonishment. There was a strange, sharp smell in the air that smarted in their noses. It makes fire, Dune said, and light. Let me try one, said Lena. She took a stick from the box and ran it across the rough strip. It blazed up fiercely, but she managed to hold on to it for a moment. Then she felt the heat on her fingers and let go. The flaming stick dropped over the ledge and into the river. Fire sticks, said Dune. Are they what saves Ember? I don't see how they could be, said Lena. They're so small and they go out so fast. She shivered. This was not turning out to be what she thought it would. She held up one of the white things. Anyway, what are these for? Dune shook his head in bewilderment. Maybe as a candle is a kind of handle? He said, maybe you tie the stick on with the string and then you can hold it longer while it burns? It would still go out just as fast, Lena said. Now remember, they don't know about candles. Can you imagine this? Yes, said Dune, but it's all I can think of. Let's try it. Again, boys and girls, I would have you turn and talk to someone at this point, because what would happen if they tied the string of a candle to a match? And when the match was burning, what do you think is going to happen? Can you make a prediction here? I bet you can. With a great deal of effort, they looped the string of a rod around one of the sticks. Lena held the rod while Dune scraped the blue tip into flame. They watched the stick flare brightly, making shadows jump up behind them. The wood turned black, and the charred fire stick crumbled and dropped to the ground. But the light didn't go out. The string itself had caught on fire. As they watched, it sputtered and smoked, and then burned steadily, filling the little room with a warm glow. "It's a movable light," said Dune in awe. All Lena's excitement flooded back. And now, she said, "we can go back into the room and see what's there." They went back down the passage and into the doorway and stepped inside. Lena held the movable light at arm's length before her. In its flickering glow, they saw something made of silvery metal. They walked slowly around, examining it. It was long and low, filling up the center of the room. One end of it came to a point. The other end was flat. Across the open middle stretched 2 metal strips. 4 stout ropes were attached to the outside, one at each end and one on each side. And on the floor of the thing were 2 poles, each flattened at one end. Have you figured out what this thing is yet? "Look," said Lena, "there's a word on the side." They squatted and pointed at the end and held the flame near the word. It said in square black letters. You ready? B-O-A-T. Boat, repeated Dune. What does that mean? Remember, they don't even know what a boat is. I don't know, said Lena. And here's another word on these things. Paddles. The only paddle I know is the one Miss Polster used on kids who misbehaved in school. Once again, they took the copy of the instructions from her pocket and consulted it, holding it in the light of the flame. Look, she said, right here. O-A-T must be boat. All right, you ready to look again? I'm going to turn you around one more time. All right, here we go, back into the book. All right, here's number 5. There's that O-A-T that she thinks is boat, stocked with N-E-C-U-I-P-E-N-T, B-A-C, big space, O-N-T, S-E-E-T. And the next part must say, stocked with necessary equipment, said Dune. That must be what's in the boxes. So the boats are stocked with necessary equipment. Then there's this, said Lena, running along the next line. U-S-I-O-P-E-S L-O-E. Look at that. Big spaces. E-T-R. Head. D-O-W-S-T. Are you figuring this out? U-S-P-A. A-V. All right, let's see what they think. This word must be ropes, she said, then lower. Then this word must be downstairs. Maybe it says head downstairs. That doesn't make sense, said Dune. There aren't any stairs except the ones that go up. He frowned at the word. Then he took a sharp breath. Downstream, he said. The word must be downstream. It must be something like use the ropes to lower the boat and head downstream. What do you think? Does that sound about right? Head downstream. What do you think? They're going to go in the boat, in the river, that big river. Remember we talked, it was like Niagara Falls. It's like so rapid. Oh, geesh. Okay. He looked up at Lena and spoke in a voice full of wonder. The boat goes on the water. It's something to ride in. They had never seen a boat before. They didn't know what it was. They stared at each other in the flickering light, realizing what this meant. There was no tunnel leading out of Ember. The way out of Ember was the river. To leave Ember, they must go on the river. Yep. If you guessed it, you were right. They are going to have to get in that boat and go on that river. Oh, can you believe it? I wonder how many of you got it right. Oh my gosh, I wish we could do a turn and talk right now. I could just hear your voices and your face, see your faces right now. This is incredible. All right, that's it for chapter 14. All right, chapter 15 is our next one, and it's called A Desperate Run. A Desperate Run. Oh, chapter 15. We only have 20, so we're getting really close. All right, that's it for today, guys. Oop, I dropped you. All right, that's it for today. I will see you for our next chapter. All right, bye.